Well, welcome here. My name is Brad Jersak, and I'm here on behalf of the Institute for Religion, Peace, and Justice, one of the co-hosts of this conversation. And I'm also the Dean of Theology and Culture at St. Stephen's University in Canada. And today I have with me two dear friends of mine, Safi Kaskas, who's a co-host of for Telos today. And he's also the translator of this incredible Quran with references to the Bible. I highly recommend it for those who want to begin to reading the Islamic scriptures for themselves in English. And then we've also got Mercy Aiken, who's based in Bethlehem right now, a real authentic peace builder there. And so we wanted to have this conversation with her. So first of all, Safi, Eid Mubarak. How do you say this right?
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak. Happy festival or blessed feast.
Merry Eid. You know, it's like Merry Christmas. Merry Eid.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. And so I wanted to begin with Safi today just by saying that it was his idea that the three of us would gather for this conversation. And I felt it would be good if you started us out by telling us why you thought it would be important to talk about what we're going to share. What is it? What's our topic today? And why you thought to bring Mercy into the conversation?
Yes. Brad, I'm 76 years old now. And every single day of my life, the Palestine-Israel problem ate with me in my dish. I don't remember one single day that I did not suffer because of that problem. Although I'm from Lebanon, I'm not from Palestine, but I also consider myself a Levantine. I grew up next to the Jewish quarter in Beirut. I grew up with many young Jews, played with them, and I remember the beginning of every Sabbath, a rabbi in our neighborhood used to come and take me by the hand to their synagogue so I can turn the light for him. So my memories of Jews and of Palestinians is intermingled with my own life. So whatever is happening in the Holy Land is happening to me personally. So this problem is very important for me, and peace for everyone there is very important for me. This is basically it.
And so if you were to give this talk or conversation a title or topic, how would you describe what we're doing today?
Searching for peace as a means of prosperity. And prosperity here is a term that would lead to every single citizen of that area. Israeli citizen, human beings. Palestinian, human beings. Lebanese, Syrian, Iraqis. I want regional peace and regional prosperity. And by the way, I have Israeli peacemakers who are partners in those same ideas I'm expressing right now. And I consulted with them before the talk, and I have their statements in writing endorsing exactly what I'm saying right now.
Oh, very good. Well, it's good to have someone who's been on the inside of this and done active face-to-face peace work with Christians, Muslims, Jews, both Palestinians and Israelis. I know for my part, I'm coming from this as a boy who grew up with my first memories of Christianity in North America that were I would say they were Christian Zionism with full of prejudice and violence. There was a real dehumanization of the other, and I can't even say that it was pro-Jewish. It was very much about our eschatology, our way of bringing Christ back through a pattern of violence that included triggering Armageddon virtually, and really cheering on war there. And for me, I've had a conversion from violence through Jesus Christ, but also I've just witnessed and been able to be in Bethlehem in the West Bank short term, but enough to see that my ways, that those thoughts were disastrous. And I'm looking for another way forward. I'm looking for how it is that we'll see peace come. And I feel like you are good conversation partners in this. Speaking of good conversation partners, I've known Mercy Aiken for a while, and I love following you on Facebook because you erode that dehumanization and prejudice through your stories and through the things you want to share. So I think now I'd want to ask you, Mercy, where are you coming from in this? What are you into? And maybe you could open up for us some of the story world you live in there and how it affects you directly.
Okay. Well, first I'll say that I have been coming and going from Bethlehem now since, I think the first time I came was in the fall of 2015. And since then I've come and gone. I've probably been here in that time about half of that amount here as I've gone back and forth. And I also spent a little bit of time living in Jordan a few winters ago in Amman, which was really cool. So I haven't been here super long term, but I've been here enough where I've gotten the opportunity to really get to know people and see what life on the ground is like. And breaking down the dehumanization of people over here is one of my passions. So I'm really glad that you felt that you have felt that come through on my Facebook page, just by sharing the personal stories of people. But I'd like to share a little bit about how I ended up coming over here. While you guys were talking, I was reminded, growing up in the United States, I also had a very dehumanized view of Palestinians in particular, and of Jewish people, almost like a fetishized idea, that they're God's rabbit foot, in a sense, like if you bless them, you'll be blessed, or they're special, they're different in this way. But cutting through all that, I'm not going to give a lot of detail on that. I remember when I decided to come over here, it was after the 2014 war in Gaza. And there was something about what happened in that particular bombing campaign that summer when Gaza was being bombed. And I don't know, I can only say that it was like a work of the Lord, a work of the Holy Spirit, that I felt so drawn within myself that it was like I was there in Gaza, like I was feeling the agony. I was identifying with those people more than I've ever experienced identifying with anybody who's on the underside of bombs that are landing on them. And even I was kind of surprised. Like Safi said, I began thinking about Israel and Palestine every single day. Every morning when I woke up, it was one of the first thoughts on my mind. Till the night when I went to bed, it was one of the last thoughts on my mind. Always throughout the day when I'd be at work, in the back of my mind, the wheels were spinning. What is going on with Israel and Palestine, Lord? What is your heart for that area? How can I help? How can I understand the situation? It seems so complicated. It seems so complex. And I really discovered that when I began to share some of my really kind of uninformed thoughts or impressions on Facebook, and people would come in armed with piles of information, wanting to argue and bringing in, just so many things that I didn't know anything about, really. I didn't know that much about this area, other than sort of having a rose-hued, fetishized view of Israel and the Jewish people. So I just want to say all that to say that's kind of the background that led me here. I remember when I decided that I wanted to come and volunteer at Bethlehem Bible College, which I found on Google when I was trying to do research about Palestinian Christians. And I remember when I started to fill out the application for the Bible College just to come and volunteer, I had this experience with the Holy Spirit where I felt like the Lord shrunk me down to something as tiny as like a little mote of dust floating in a ray of light. That's what I felt like I was suspended up, that I was lightweight, that I was so tiny, but I was held in this place of light. And the feeling was so amazing because it was simultaneously the most expansive feeling that I've ever felt. And I knew that this was the feeling of, like, you might say, the internal feeling of God. you know, like I'm this small and I'm this, like you can't measure me by any type of size measurement. But I knew in that he wanted me to come here in a place of humility, of tininess, of smallness, not coming in like, you know, an American who knows what's going on and is going to explain things to people. I'm going to come here in the posture of a learner, and I'm going to come here to observe, and I'm going to come here to try to understand what's going on so that hopefully, God willing, in some way, I can do something then that can help this situation here. So that's what motivated me to come. And gosh, stories, you know, one of the ones that comes to my mind right away, if you want to hear a story about Palestinians, this was just something that happened a few days ago during Ramadan. Right at Bethlehem Bible College where I live, the separation wall between Israel and Palestine is right down the street. Literally, you walk outside of our gate and you look down the road and there's the wall right there with a huge watchtower and a big military gate that has opened many times since I've been here, and I've seen lots of things happen here on the street in front of the college. And Ida refugee camp is right behind the college, and it comes up right against the wall over there. And it was during the COVID days. Everything was still, you know, pretty much quiet. There wasn't that much going on. And I didn't venture out on the street that much because almost all the foreigners were gone. And foreigners are the ones that brought coronavirus here. So I felt like I had to be a little careful going out on the street. But I decided to just walk down to the wall and just take a little walk. And when I got down to the wall, usually I follow the route of the wall towards the checkpoint. But this time I thought, you know, I've never actually walked through the weeds around the corner on the other side. I don't even know what's there. So took off walking, and I realized that it was a Muslim graveyard. When I turned around the corner of the wall, I realized that it was this whole graveyard that was like jammed right up against the wall. And right behind the graveyard, sticking up above the wall, you could see the top of Rachel's tomb. And I realized for the first time that Rachel's tomb had actually been within this whole graveyard itself. And that when they put the wall around both sides of Rachel's tomb, if you've ever been there, I don't know if either of you have, but you basically drive down this long tunnel, like the separation wall is on both sides. And so you're driving through basically like cement and asphalt till you get to the place where Rachel's tomb is, and then you can go in there and pray. But literally right on the other side is this Muslim graveyard, and I had never seen it from the backside. So I was walking around back there and just looking at things and taking pictures, and I was thinking about how sad it must be for the people who live here in this camp, that if they want to come and like, you know, just be at the grave of their loved one, that it's underneath the shadow of all these watchtowers and cameras, surveillance cameras, and the wall. And it just felt really uncomfortable back there. I just almost felt like I had the feeling that I was probably being surveyed, and that, you know, maybe even pictures were being taken of me or something, you know, and it just made me uncomfortable. So I left. And as I was walking out, I ran into this little old lady who was walking out of the grave, the graveyard. Didn't have any teeth. And I waved at her, and she waved at me, and she immediately just starts blowing kisses to me. And that's one of the things that I want to say about Palestinians, is that they are so warm and open-hearted and friendly and very like gregarious and outgoing, and very, very generous and very, very hospitable. All of which I had no idea of, and generally not violent at all, like very, very, way more passive, I would say, than like the average American, you know, like things just keep happening to them and they just kind of keep rolling with it, because what else can they do? So all of that was a huge paradigm shift for me to begin to see Palestinians that way, because it was so completely different than the idea that I'd had of them growing up in the States. So anyway, this lady and I start kissing each other, even though it was COVID days. I thought, oh, she doesn't care. She's kissing me on both cheeks. And so we started talking, and she mentioned how she had been, my Arabic is kind of so-so, but I can have conversations now with people generally. And she mentioned that she had been shot in the in her shoulder by a soldier during the first Intifada, and that her shoulder was still aching and hurting a lot, and she didn't have any medicine for it. And it was kind of a little bit more expensive than what you would have thought around here. But I happened to have that exact amount of money in my purse, and I felt like the Lord wanted me to just give it to her. So I just opened my purse, and I don't often just go around handing out money, because I don't think that's necessarily always real helpful anywhere. But I felt like with this lady, like, give her this money. And oh, you know, she was sweet. We hugged and kissed, and that was the end of that. I didn't think anything more about it. But she came back to the college a few days later, and they're like, Mercy, there's a lady out here at the front gate. And I thought, who? It's an old lady. I thought, a Hajja lady. I was like, who, you know, because people still weren't moving around much. So I went out there and I recognized her, and she started calling me Rahma, that's my name in Arabic. And she was like, Binti, my daughter, Habibti, my dear. You know, she just starts calling me all these sweet, affectionate names. And she's like, come with me, come with me. And she's kind of pulling me. So I follow her over to Azza refugee camp, which is on the other side of the street. And, you know, these camps, they're just narrow cement alleyways, towering cement buildings. There's no place for anything green to grow. No cars can drive through most of these streets because they're just so narrow. There's so many people that are packed into them. And, you know, I just pity the children. I mean, they don't know they're kids, but they're running around the alleyways playing. And she takes me to the home of her daughter in Azza camp, who has a bunch of kids. They're all sleeping late. It's Ramadan, and everyone starts getting up. And I find out she's a widow. And I think, okay, she brought me here because maybe she's hoping I can help her daughter too. Okay, whatever money I have, I'll give her. It's Ramadan. And this is what I'm thinking in my mind. And they're like, sit down. And then they start bringing out gifts for me. They wanted to bless me. They weren't asking me for anything. And they start putting a shawl on me. And then they bring out the boys, her sons, the widow's sons. They normally sell stuff at the checkpoint to the tourist cars that are coming and going. There's a lot of people who stand out there in the hot sun and, you know, just trying to sell like whatever stuff they bought. And of course they can't sell anything. Everything's shut. I don't know where this family is getting any kind of income at all during COVID because everything's completely shut down. You know, I don't know how they're even eating. But they're bringing out the wares that they have because that's something tangible that they do have. And they're just piling it on me. And I'm like, stop, stop, stop. You know, when they first started showing me, I thought, okay, I'll buy this or that from them. And I'm kind of putting together a little pile of stuff that I thought was nice. And they're like, no, it's a gift. Take it. We won't take money. You have to take it. It's a gift. And they just kept giving me more and more and more until I was almost like crying. Like I was just like, stop it, stop it, stop it. And they were like, you are part of our family now. We love you. When can you come and eat with us for Ramadan and for iftar? And what do you want to eat? What would you like, Rahma? We want to, whatever you want. And I thought, oh, you know, the one thing I would love right now is warak dawale. It's the grape leaves that are stuffed, and the Palestinians just make them so good. Like they are so much more savory and delicious than any other kind I've had anywhere. And I thought, oh, that's what I would like, but that's real time consuming. So I didn't say that. I just said, I love all Palestinian food, whatever you make would be wonderful. And she said, how about warak dawale? And it was just so precious because I just felt the Lord there with us so much in that meeting. And so I went back a few days later and we had a wonderful meal. I'm sure that they went above and beyond what they could do, because that's how they are. They really want to show love by the way that they show hospitality. And that's one of, I'll just tag onto that story, that's one of the most powerful things that I have learned from Muslims in general, being over here. Every Palestinian is very hospitable, and I've met some incredibly hospitable Jewish people too that really rival some of the best Muslim mamas. But it's the Muslim mamas, I would say, like, they win. If there was like a competition here between like who has outdone each other the most in that way, just in terms of generous hospitality, the Muslims have completely blown me away and humbled me in a good way. I just, I'm in awe of it. So many times I have said to somebody, I've learned not to say to Muslims, oh, that's a beautiful ring you're wearing, because they might take it off their finger and put it on mine, or compliment anything. There's a generosity that's like beyond the normal that I've ever experienced. And I just want to say that, because for people who don't know anything about Muslims, maybe they haven't really had much opportunity maybe to interact with Muslims. I want you to know that about Muslims, that that's one of the elements, I would say, of like the Abrahamic tradition. I think it goes back to Abraham, doesn't it, Safi?
Yes.
When
Yes,
he entertained the angels.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question here?
Sure.
I want to build on what you're saying.
Okay.
Now, let's imagine a hypothetical situation, knowing what you know about the Palestinians today,
Mm-hmm.
and what you experienced with them. Do you think if the European Jews had come to the Palestinians and said to them, we are persecuted in Europe, and we want a place where we are safe, and you in the Middle East always open the doors for us.
Mm-hmm.
Can we please come here, share life with you? We have European know-how. We're going to build schools. We're going to build universities. We're going to develop agriculture, industry, and we will do it for our children and yours. Do you think, from your experience, the Palestinian would have agreed to share all that instead of? I mean.
Yes, I do.
I build everything I believe in today on this, on the fact, why are you taken by force what you can take with love?
Yeah.
This is where I come from at the end of my life now, after all these years of experience, after all these years of being angry, fighting, wanting to fight. I find myself rediscovering love, rediscovering that we can do peacefully what a lot of people die trying to accomplish with aggression. Aggression is not necessarily all the time. Maybe it's not necessarily ever. If people can sit together and show love, show respect to start with. See, you showed that lady respect, and she returned it with love. And this is basically the character that you'll find in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, in Iraq. We're the same people, regardless what the British like to call us, what Sykes-Picot called us. But we're the same people, you know?
That's right.
So this is...
So I have a question. I have a question for both of you about this then, because we're going to segue in a little while into Safi's proposal for peace. But before we get there, and maybe to get there is, my experience was that coming out of Christian Zionism with the same kind, you know, that fundamentalism and all of that, when that began to unravel by seeing injustice, my temptation was then to just switch sides and go from hating Palestinians to hating Jews. And that's not it, right? that would be to switch sides without switching spirits. And now I have dear friends, you know, our friend Donna Winship is a Jewish woman, and I just love her so much, and I work with her. And I think, okay, there must be a way to not simply now switch sides and dehumanize the Jews. Because even Donna, for example, growing up in America with this Christian Zionism, was she nevertheless experienced anti-Semitism from the same people. And so, it's like, oh my goodness, we've got, so I'm wondering what advice we have for people who have, let's say they've made it just, well, I've moved from the political right to the political left, and I used to hate Palestinians and now I hate Jews. And it's like that, it's such an adventure in missing the point.
Yeah.
Let's start with Mercy, and then we'll move to Safi for his peace plan. I think that would be great. But Mercy, how have you managed to transcend that and not just turn this into anti-Semitism on your part?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm so glad you brought that up. When I first got here, you know, I was really trying to find my footing. You know, I read a lot before I got here, and I really came with the desire to just be supportive of both people and, you know, love both people and everything. But I came here and immediately tensions started flaring. There were clashes on the street. People were being killed. And I found that for a time, because I was just with the Palestinians, that I started to see everything so much through Palestinian eyes that it came to where I didn't know how to look at the Israelis. And I do want to differentiate between Israelis and Jews, because there's a lot of Jews who don't live in Israel, and there's a lot of might even say, well, I'll just leave it at that. But when I'd walk through the checkpoint into Jerusalem, I would see the soldiers and I would feel kind of, not necessarily scared, but I would feel kind of angsty. Like I didn't know how to interact with them. And some of my friends, not necessarily no one here at the Bible College in particular, but just people that I talked to, there was sort of this anti-normalization mindset. Like we don't want to mingle or mix with the Israelis because we don't want to normalize the situation. This is very dysfunctional, what's going on. And until there are proper boundaries of justice that are established, we can't just, you know, be cozy. And so I was thinking about this, you know, while I'd be going to and from Jerusalem. And one thing I noticed is that when I was in Palestine and I'd walk down the street and smile and make eye contact with people, they would always smile and make eye contact back with me. When I was on the Israeli side, it seemed like nobody did that. People, the Israelis struck me as just a little more harsh or rude or impersonal somehow. But I want to say that was all in my mind, because what happened to me is that the Lord started dealing with my heart, reminding me that if I had grown up in Israel, say my parents moved to Israel, they made Aliyah, I'm a little girl, or maybe I'm born there, I grow up in Israel. When I'm 18 years old, guess where I'm going? Into the army. Because they all have to go into the army. And I don't think at the age of 18, I would have had the kind of moral or political sophistication or fortitude to buck that system and get put in jail and bring shame on my family name or whatever. I would have been a soldier, and I would have tried to be a nice one, you know. And when that really hit me, not just in my head, but in my heart, if that could have been me, in a sense it is me. That person, that soldier that's standing there guarding the way to and from in the checkpoint is me, in a sense.
Yeah.
That's when I really learned you cannot love your neighbor as yourself until you know that your neighbor is yourself in some sense. And I began to say to myself, I'm the Israeli is me. I am not looking at some other thing. I am actually looking at something that's very close to America, that's very much in some ways like America. And even aside from all that, just as a human being, that would be me, that soldier there. And how would I want to be treated? Me, Mercy, standing there wearing that uniform, hot, looking at these people coming and going. How would I want to be treated? I would want someone to recognize my humanity. That would help me. So I started looking at the soldiers and saying, shalom. And finding that when I said it to them, I meant it with all my heart. And I started having love and compassion for them. And once that happened, I became less fearful of the Israelis. And I realized that what I perceived as a hardness or a brusqueness or a rudeness or whatever was a lot of my own projection. Because after this changed in me, I found that I could walk the street in West Jerusalem and I could smile and say shalom, and people looked me back in the eye and they smiled and they said shalom, just like they did over here on the Palestinian side. And that was a real wake-up call, because it made me realize that so much of what I had seen externally was coming out of what was going on with me internally. And I was so grateful, because I knew the way that I was feeling before wasn't the heart of God. It wasn't the heart of Jesus Christ. And I felt bad about it. But a lot of times you have feelings like that. You can't necessarily just change on your own. You need help from the Lord, you know. You need some kind of divine intervention to come in and set something that's out of kilter, out of joint within you, to set it right.
Well, and we need to see Christ. We need to see Christ in the other, right? To see.
Exactly. Yeah. Now I would just sum it up by saying you really see the image of God in everybody, and you want for everybody. You want for this group what you want for that group. So if I want to see Palestinians liberated, I want to see the Israelis liberated too. They need liberation too in other ways. If I want to see Israelis living in security, I want to see Palestinians also living in security. I'm not going to want for one group what I don't want for the other. There's no one group that gets something that the other doesn't. The Lord wants to bless everybody here. And so, you know, that's my mindset now. And I'm just so thankful, because since that time, He's given me some really amazing, beautiful friendships with Israelis that I just cherish, and I've gotten so much out of and learned so much from.
Thanks, Mercy.
Can I take it from there?
Yeah,
Brad?
please take it from there, Safi. And this is where just share whatever you like, your point of view, the heart of the matter, but also, you know, your ideas for peace that transcend all of this.
Well,
green light.
Actually, Mercy set the stage for what I want to say.
Yeah.
Take a picture that you'll see all over Facebook, all over newspapers. Any day of the week, if you're in the West Bank, you can see a picture like this. A young Israeli soldier pointing a gun at a younger Palestinian student going to school in the morning. Now, I used to take this kind of picture, put it on Facebook, in order to get people to have more hatred toward the Israeli and more sympathy toward the Palestinians. Until I realized that both are victims, which is what Mercy was saying a few minutes ago. If you really have God's love in your heart, you would really realize that these both parties are victims, and you want the best for both of them. So my ideas of being pro-Israelis, not pro-Israel, pro-Israelis, pro-Palestinians, we're talking about people, pro-peace, is to save the young Israeli people, the young Palestinian people, because you know that soldier, after 2 years of service in the West Bank, which is under occupation, he's gonna go back home sometime with all kind of problems. You know, oppressing children younger than he is every day. And he is oppressing older people every day. And that's not healthy.
Right.
And the young Palestinian is being oppressed every day on his way to school and on his way back from school. And if he's going out shopping with his parents, he's watching his mother being oppressed. I mean, this whole situation is nothing but continuous oppression for both sides. Mind you, it's very important to add here, if you were living in Jaffa or Haifa or Tel Aviv, you wouldn't know what's going on in Tel Aviv, in the West Bank.
That's right.
Average Israelis have no clue what's going on in the West Bank. They haven't been with Palestinians. They haven't walked the streets in Bethlehem that Mercy have walked. They haven't walked in Khalil. They haven't had the settlers throwing rocks at them or throwing dirty water at them or cursing them or shooting at them even. They don't know what's going on. They're going about their life as if they were living in New York still, you know?
That's right.
If they were still in New York, they'd be going about business, building their business, taking care of their own families. They don't know that few miles away, they are, you know, all these Palestinians that being oppressed. Mercy mentioned in whatever small time she took, two refugee camps. In other words, you have a large portion of the Palestinian population living in refugee camps. To live in a refugee camp, they were not born there. They had to move there. So in order to be in a refugee camp, that means you lived somewhere else, you were kicked out, and then you had to find refuge in a refugee camp. So all this is not good. It wasn't even healthy for me to know all this information. I believe that God is justice. One of his wonderful names in the Quran is peace and is justice. So I start looking for God's peace and God's justice until one day I was participating in a conference in Amman, sponsored by Norway, I think. It had people from the European Union, some Israelis, a lot of Israeli peace activists, some Palestinian peace activists. And I was invited to that conference and I was chairing one of the meetings. That morning, it was my turn to chair the first meeting. So I was preparing, making sure the microphones works, everything is working. And suddenly I felt the Holy Spirit is there telling me to stop the meeting, stand up and make a speech. I did that. I told everybody, I'm sorry. I have certain things I have to say. And I turned to the Israelis and I said, look, you're living a paradigm of power. You listened since you came from wherever you came from to Palestine, that if you can grab it, take it, and if you can defend it, it's yours. I said, you listen to people like Henry Kissinger, for instance. He gives you such an advice. But there is another Jew that you're not listening to. That other Jew would say, if you can take it with love, why take it by force? Why are you putting your children in harm's way instead of living together with your neighbors and loving them? By the time I finished expressing myself, I watched, and this young Israeli, she was crying. And I paused for a minute, got up, and she said, can I come and give you a hug? I said, you certainly can. I need one right now. So she walked into me, and next thing I know, they all got up and they all came one after the other and gave me a hug. The reason they started hugging me, they told me, we were looking for a way out and you just showed it to us. What should we do now? I said, if every one of you will go to their neighbor and say, we're sorry for the past. We're ready to have a new future with you. Let's live together in peace. Let's build this place together. Let's build a better Palestine, Israel, better Holy Land. Let's take that example and spread it. Cooperation and love throughout the Middle East. Not only Palestine, Israel have problems. In Lebanon, they have plenty of problems. In Syria, plenty of problems. In Iraq, we all need reconciliation. We all need love. We all need to replace our hatred for our enemy, which comes from our ego, into what Jesus talked about, loving your enemy. And this morning, I put on Facebook my understanding of how to love my enemy. The Quran teach me that good and bad are never equal. If you approach your enemy with whatever is better than hatred, better on whatever he's hoping for, you come to him, and if he wants your shirt, give him the whole thing. You will end up like intimate friends. This is the Quran teaching me this. It's not like far-fetched. And how would I love my enemy? You love your enemy by sitting with your enemy and talking to your enemy. And the most courageous is the one that extends his hand first. And the real hero is the one that talks about reconciliation first.
Amen.
The story of the Middle East is an unfortunate story of nationalism, which is Zionism. Nationalism that's getting nowhere. We're creating a huge ghetto there, much bigger than any ghetto ever built in history. We don't want the Jews to live in a ghetto. I want the Jews to live in an open society.
Amen.
I want peace for the Israeli citizens, peace for the Palestinians, because I want peace for the Middle East. My generation did not know peace in the Middle East. So how do we get peace? By respecting the other, by showing them they truly can trust us, because they're a human being and we're a human being, and our Creator is one. He created both of us. And in the Quran, God says, we have honored the children of Adam. So if God honored even those that reject him, because they're children of Adam, he still honored them. Why wouldn't I honor them? Wouldn't it be a better way to sit with them and show them respect? Look, in Spain, in Andalusia, after Andalusia fell, the Catholic at that time came and told everybody means Jews and Muslims, you either convert or we're gonna kill you. The Muslims ran down to Morocco and hid there, and some Jews also went with them. The Ottoman Sultan sent his fleet and took all the Jews on his fleet, and he took them back to the Ottoman Empire, and they lived there peacefully, and some of them are descendants of those people that went there at that time. In Beirut, I lived next to the Jewish area, in Saida, where my wife is from. I went and looked for the Jewish synagogue. I want to restore it. So when the Lebanese Jews come back, they'll find their synagogue intact, out of respect for them. Respecting the Jews is respecting Moses, is respecting Abraham, is respecting God who created all of us. If they can feel about me the same way, we will have peace in a second. This paradigm of strength, grab it, and if you can keep it, defend it. At the end, the other side will be stronger and grab it from you and defeat you again. You see, life is a cycle. Right now, you're riding high. Tomorrow, you might not. So do you want to end inside Israel the same way you ended in other ghettos in Europe? We're not Europe. We're Semitic like you. I'm very Semitic. I love Jews because I'm Semitic. And I love Christians because I love Jesus. And I love Muslims because I'm a Muslim. You know, it's all about love. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. So I'm right. So what? The Palestinians are right. This is what I told a Palestinian lady yesterday. I was consulting with her about what I intend to say. She said, but we are right. We have to have justice before we can do this. I said, we haven't been able to get justice this way for the last 60, 70 years. So how long do we wait until our grandchildren are living in refugee camps also? Or do we take the initiative today and say we want peace and try to get Israeli who have a heart, who have a spirit, to come and join us and form together a strong front that will fight for peace? What the Prime Minister is doing right now is nothing. He's riding high, saying he called himself the savior of Israel. No, sir, you're not the savior of anything. You're just playing with the toys the United States gave you and you developed inside Israel. And that one day can lead you to a dead street. What I'm talking about is not a dead street. It's open, has many bridges we have to cross, but it's an open highway where my children and your children, my grandchildren and your grandchildren will grow up together. So what does it mean to want peace for the Israelis, peace for the Palestinians, and peace for everybody? It means that Israel needs to recognize the Palestinian as people. The narrative the Palestinians have make as much sense as the narrative the Israeli have. They both have their own narratives. They both convinced that their narrative is the right narrative. Well, I want to listen I did listen carefully to both of them. I understand where they're both coming from. I'm saying today, the Palestinians should be recognized as people with self-determination. They should have their own state that will go into a federation with Israel immediately. Immediately. A Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza cannot survive on its own. Has to be in a federation with Israel immediately. And that federation should be a Levantine federation, a federation for the Holy Land. It should invite Jordan to join it. It should invite Lebanon to join it. It should invite Syria and Iraq. And they should be like the European Union. Internally, each state is free to decide on its own what happened about its election laws, about its people and all this. But the Israeli at that time will have the right to live in the West Bank or to live in Amman, and the Jordanian will have the right to live in Nablus or to live in Jaffa or in Haifa, or can go to Beirut and live there, or can go to Damascus, or a Syrian can come and start a corporation in Jerusalem and start exporting stuff to Europe, to the United States, anywhere he wants. This is the way out of the Sykes-Picot Treaty that the French and the British used to divide the Middle East, divide and conquer. We should wake up as Levantine people, as Middle Eastern people. We should wake up and reject what the British and the French did after World War I and decide to bring everybody together. A few days ago, the Congress here approved another huge gift to Israel. When everybody is busy with the coronavirus, the Congress was busy passing all kind of stuff, and the media is not reporting it. Well, if my plan is in fact, they will be sending it also to my children, because my children will benefit from it, and to my grandchildren. If United States is willing to continue to be so generous to over there, it might as well be on that deal, you know, and get some of that. But the Middle East, the whole Middle East can grow together, can prosper together. And this is the way for a lasting peace. Suppose today Israel announced it's going to annex large parts of the West Bank. This will be disastrous. Why? Because it's going to leave less hope for young Palestinians. When you have less hope, what do? You want to fight. You don't want to live with no hope. At least now they're hoping for a two-state solution. But I'm telling you, the two-state solution, the way it is proposed, have no chance to happen. And a Palestinian state will not live on its own. Not enough resources. Even Jordan is not able to live on its own. So we need to bring them together using the Israeli ingenuity, the Palestinian creativity, the Jordanian entrepreneurship, the Lebanese know-how, the Syrian depth and agriculture. Everybody will have something to contribute to this, where Jews can live again anywhere they want in the Middle East safely. They're citizens of the Federation. And Arabs, if I am so taken by the idea of living in Jerusalem and I'm determined to go and live there, of course, real estate is going to become 10 times more expensive than it is today because all this demand, you know. But then it's up to me. It's up to me. The Jews will have the right to worship there freely. The Muslims will have the right to worship there freely. And the Christian will have the right to live there freely. The Christians are dwindling out of the Holy Land. Few are left. They were over 10%, maybe 20%. Right now, very few and far. I almost know every one of them. You know, there's so few of them. You know, we want them to
less
come back.
than 2%. Yeah.
Yes, here you go. So we want everybody to feel the Holy Land is truly holy. Right now, it's not holy. And all this Christian Zionism ideas, we going to bring all the Jews. This is anti-Semitic, by the way. We want to bring all the Jews there so Jesus can come back. Are you telling me that Jesus is waiting for what you do in order to come back? God's timing is his timing. It's not your timing. I play by God's timing for my life, his will for me, not my will for him. You know, maybe if you want him to come quickly, at least follow him quicker. At least do what he used to do quicker. At least be nice to your neighbors. You're not being nice to your neighbors here in the United States. I wrote a book to make you feel that we are from the same prophethood line. Yeah, so even if I don't have that book, Jesus taught you to love me as your neighbor. You're not doing it. And you want to expedite the coming back of Jesus to the Holy Land? This is not how it's done. When Jesus wants to come back, I have news for you. We have 1.6 billion Muslims who are waiting for him to follow him at the advice of their prophet Muhammad. He said, when Jesus comes, you all follow him. Come on. Let's do what Jesus would do if he was here with us today. When Jesus decides to come back, it's up to him to come back in his own time. But today, my job, if I follow Jesus, is to love my Jewish neighbor, my Christian neighbor, to love Palestinians, to love Israelis, to love Jordanian, to love everybody I encounter. Because when I'm nice to them, I'm nice to their creator who created them. This is basically my plan. Thank you.
That's a good plan. What did you think of that, Mercy? What was that like? If you want Jesus to come more quickly, you should follow him quicker.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Instead of all this political scheming and things that are going on right now.
We should start winding up, but Mercy, why don't you start with the wind up then, in terms of what are your closing thoughts? What do you think the heart of the matter is, or anything you've missed that you wish you'd included now?
Oh my gosh. First of all, Safi, I love that plan. I love that vision. You know, one of the things, Walter Brueggemann wrote a book about prophetic imagination. And we had a session here at the college one time where we were encouraged to prophetically imagine. Use your imagination and ask God for a vision of what could be here. And I envisioned, and others have envisioned, something very similar to what you said. These open borders, the way it used to be, where you can drive up to Beirut and have your lunch, and you can go down to Gaza and have your dinner, and you can go over to Damascus or whatever. It's open, and I believe that is the heart of the Lord and the heart of the kingdom. When I look at the reality on the ground here, and this potential upcoming annexation, which it seems like the Israelis are talking very seriously about
It's
this.
coming.
And
It's coming.
they're going to want to strike while the iron is hot, while Trump is in office.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very grieved about this, because I know personally and love personally some of the areas that I know are slated to be annexed.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling it like a Palestinian, because I'm going, am I going to be able to go over there anymore and enjoy that?
No.
You know, it's going to be a different world. And so many of my friends are in danger of actually losing their homes, losing their properties, having what they have tried so hard to hold on to taken from them in a moment. So I see your vision, though. You know, I believe that in the mind and heart of God, that this is what he wants. I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get there, but I think we need to keep casting that vision, speaking that vision, you know, and the things that you said that are so disarming to our Jewish friends who have very deep in their psyche an existential fear and dread of much of the world. And I know that is what has propelled so much of what has gone on here. So our Jewish friends need to know that they can lay down their arms and be safe. And many of them, I don't know what it will take to convince them of that, other than, you know, continued love and continued listening and continued hand extended. I think that's going to be a big part of what it's ultimately going to take to bring peace here. And I see many
one heart at a time, Mercy. One heart at a time.
But what is amazing to me is the Palestinians I see who know this and understand this, and who are doing this, even in the midst of being oppressed under the occupation, that they understand this. And I'm talking Muslims and Christians, both, who are doing this and who are advocating for this. So I think as outsiders, one of the best things that we can do is listen to these people, support the people who are doing this, support the Palestinians and the Israelis who have the will and the desire to keep pursuing this type of vision, because it's not easy for them. And the more that we can amplify their voices and stand alongside them, the quicker things might change. As outsiders, I'm saying what we can do. Other things that we can do is advocate for justice, educate people at home, you know, like what the reality actually is over here, deal with the theological issues. But probably, like you said, Safi, ultimately it comes down to living the kingdom, you know, living the kingdom of love and just doing it, regardless of whether it looks high or low, hopeful or hopeless or whatever. We just have to keep doing the right thing because it's the right thing, and God holds the solution and the answer.
It is as important, Mercy, to work. It's very important to work among Israelis and among Palestinians, but it's as important to work among our American neighbors here.
That's right.
Yes. Yesterday, every Palestinian I spoke to yesterday is very convinced that any American that would realize that lasting peace will be in loving every side. We're supporting this idea. I haven't had one who said, no, it wouldn't work, because they all realize it's long term. To do God's will for our lives is to love everybody. They know this. They were Christians, they were Muslims, Palestinians, and I haven't had one person who said, no, it wouldn't work. So working in the United States is very important. Explaining to evangelicals specifically that this is very important, and turning them from Christian Zionists into followers of Jesus is very important. The same way I learned to love from Jesus, they need to learn to love from Jesus. It's very simple. And let him do the rest. It's not, look, succeeding in doing this vision is not my job. It's God's job.
That's right.
My job is to plant the seeds.
That's right.
And let God water them and until they become trees. It's his job. I'm not going to live long enough to see those plants becoming trees, but he's everlasting. He's going to be there forever. Maybe for my grandchildren will have peace in the Middle East, but it's important for me to plant the seeds. This is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm calling you to do. And I want you to invite your friends and neighbors to plant those seeds, you know?
Amen.
And one tree will make it a little bit better, more bearable to live in the Middle East and in this world that's full of trouble, you know? This is basically where I'm coming from.
Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you both for sharing. And I really appreciate the time you gave to this and the wisdom. And we encourage our listeners to take these matters to heart and to share it broadly with your friends. So again, thank you, Mercy. Thank you, Safi. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Great to see you.
Bye, Mercy. Bye.